Before the sun even rose over the sprawling city of Lagos, Michael, a 12-year-old boy, was already awake. The city was still half asleep, the streets humming with the distant noises of an urban jungle preparing for its daily grind. But to Michael, the weight of the world felt much heavier than the bustling sound of the city around him. He clutched his baby brother, Toby, to his chest, his little frame barely able to hold up the frail weight of Toby's tiny body. The stench of the streets and the exhaust fumes from the passing cars made it hard to breathe, but nothing was harder than the empty, gnawing hunger that had become their constant companion. Michael's worn-out clothes, the torn shoes, and the empty pot he carried in his hand were all symbols of the life he had known, a life shaped by tragedy. They lived in a crumbling shack, far from the shining towers of the rich, where life seemed to carry on without a care for people like them. His mother had passed away after a long battle with illness, and his father, broken by grief, had disappeared into the void of his own despair. Michael and Toby were all they had left. Their days were filled with struggle, but Michael never stopped hoping. Not for himself, but for Toby, his baby brother who was his world. It was a sharp contrast, these towering skyscrapers filled with riches and luxury, and the crumbling, overcrowded streets Michael called home. But he knew that today would be different. He would find a way to get food for Toby, the little boy whose eyes still held hope despite being on the brink of death from hunger. Michael had heard of her, the woman who owned the penthouse on the tallest building in the city. A billionaire whose name was synonymous with power, beauty, and the kind of wealth that could make a difference in a million lives, yet somehow, she remained untouched by the suffering of the world below her. But Michael was desperate. He didn't care who she was. He wasn't asking for money or a handout. He just needed food. Food for his baby brother. Ruth was a woman of grace and elegance, accustomed to luxury. She had no knowledge of the streets Michael roamed. She had never known true hunger, never truly seen the face of the desperate. But when she first saw Michael and Toby, she couldn't help but feel something stir within her. It wasn't just pity, it was something deeper, something more human. Michael, with his big, earnest eyes and his quiet dignity, had a vulnerability that spoke to her. "Please, my brother, he hasn't eaten for days. He's sick," Michael pleaded one afternoon when he found Ruth coming out of her building. Ruth had been on her way to a business meeting, but something about the boy stopped her. His voice, trembling with desperation, caught her off guard. She had seen poverty before, but there was something different about Michael. He wasn't asking for charity. He was asking for mercy, for a chance to save his brother. She took out a few bills from her purse, but Michael refused them. "I don't want money. I just want food. Please, feed him," he repeated. Ruth, deeply moved by his words, didn't know why but found herself agreeing to help. She started bringing them food, clothes, and whatever else she could spare. Over time, she visited them more often, drawn to Michael and Toby's plight. She began to care for them in a way that went beyond simple charity. She felt something shift in her, a feeling that couldn't be explained by logic, only by the deep, aching connection that pulled her towards them. But the world she came from, the world of power, privilege, and control, was different from Michael's. He wasn't supposed to belong in her world. And deep down, Ruth knew that getting involved with him could complicate her carefully constructed life. Yet, her heart refused to listen to reason. As time passed, Ruth's involvement grew deeper. Michael and Toby became her secret, a part of her life she didn't want to admit to anyone. But there was always a voice inside her warning her to be careful. This was not a game. This was real life. And sometimes, gold could burn you if you weren't careful. And then, everything changed. Michael's quiet desperation gave way to something else. It was subtle at first, but Ruth couldn't ignore the feeling creeping up on her, that Michael might not be as innocent as he seemed. One day, Ruth overheard a conversation between Michael and someone she didn't know. He was planning something. A lie. An act to manipulate her. "Just get her to trust you. Then we can get the medicine." Michael's voice trembled with the weight of his guilt. Ruth's heart sank as she realized the boy she had been helping had been using her all along. His tears, his pleas, they were all part of a strategy to gain something from her. Betrayal wasn't the right word. It was more than that. It was the realization that everything had been a calculated move, not just desperation. The trust she had placed in him shattered in an instant. She confronted Michael, but he didn't deny it. There was no anger, no defensive posture. Just a deep, aching sadness in his eyes, as though he, too, had realized that everything had gone wrong. Ruth walked away that day, feeling like her entire world had been upended. She wasn't naive. She knew how to play the game of power. But in this moment, she realized she wasn't just playing with money or status, she was playing with people's lives. But Ruth wasn't someone who gave up easily. She may have been hurt, but she wasn't defeated. She spent the following weeks carefully planning her next move. She wasn't just going to forgive Michael and Toby. She was going to make them see the truth. Their game had consequences. She tracked down every piece of information she could about Michael's past, about the fire that had destroyed his home, and the long, painful road he had traveled to survive. She learned about the trauma he had endured, the pain of watching his parents fade away, and his desperate attempt to protect Toby at all costs. When she was ready, she made her move. Ruth didn't come in with accusations. Instead, she used her wealth and influence to open doors for Michael and Toby, to offer them real help. She arranged for Toby to see doctors, to get the care he so desperately needed. Ruth didn't have to destroy Michael to save him. She didn't need to break him down in order to build him up. She realized that sometimes, people just needed a chance. They needed to feel that someone believed in them. In the end, Michael learned what true kindness was. Ruth saw through his faults and recognized the child inside him who had been trying so hard to survive. They weren't so different, after all. They were both simply humans, caught in the web of a world that didn't always offer them a fair chance. Their story didn't end with fireworks or dramatic speeches. It was quieter than that, less about public victories and more about private healing. As Michael and Ruth sat together in the small shack they now shared, watching the rain fall outside, they didn't need words to understand each other. They were no longer enemies, no longer people from different worlds. They were just two souls, bound by the simple truth that sometimes all it takes to heal is a little compassion. The city outside raged on, but inside that small space, for the first time in a long while, there was peace.